When the Bible describes that kind of slavery, it's describing something that other cultures do. It's not prescribing, it's not regulating what the Israelites were to do. When I say slavery, the first thing that comes into your mind is antebellum Southern slavery or the transatlantic slave trade, right? That's the first thing you think of? Of course it is. It was abolished, frankly speaking, in human history not too long ago. And Jim Crow laws didn't get destroyed or pushed out or whatever not too long ago. And we still got issues we're dealing with today. I don't need to tell you in this area. You know, it wasn't lost on me when we landed in Minneapolis Airport, where we were. I was going to speak on this issue. When I say slavery, we think of antebellum Southern slavery, and so when the Bible says the word slavery, that's what we think of immediately. Now, words have etymological meaning, they have equivocal meaning, and they have unequivocal meaning. So an equivocal meaning is a meaning that could actually mean something depending on its context. So if I say the word foot, what do I mean? You have no idea. I could mean 12 inches, or I could mean the things at the end of my legs. If I say my foot hurt, now you know what I mean. You know I don't mean a ruler of 12-inch length. You know I mean the things at the end of my legs. So if I say slavery, if there's different connotations to this word, depending on the context. So my name is a good example. My name is Abdu. Abdu in Arabic, which is a Semitic language, which shares the same root as Hebrew. The Hebrew word for slave is ebed. And you can see the etymology and the similarities right there. My name means slave of God. Or it literally means his servant or his slave, but not in a slave in a way where I was kidnapped out of my home and forced into slavery, I was owned as property. No, it means that I've chained myself to a being who is more noble than me in an effort to ennoble myself by glorifying him. That's the whole context here. So it's not actually an insult. It's actually, in the context of my name, it's actually meant to be an honorific. We see people who are named Obed or Obadiah. The word slave is right in their name. It's not an insult in one sense. Sometimes it can mean someone who is owned as property against their will. It can mean that. But when the Bible describes that kind of slavery, it's describing something that other cultures do. It's not prescribing, it's not regulating what the Israelites were to do. See, when the Bible describes slavery that's regulated in the Bible, it's not chattel slavery based on race. Chattel slavery is owning someone as property. Race-based chattel slavery is the transatlantic slave trade. You own someone as property based on their race because you think that their race is less than yours. The Bible knows nothing of this. Nothing of it whatsoever. So when you see the word slave, you often can think it's bondservant or someone who bonds themselves or binds themselves to a master on purpose so they can pay off a debt. See, in the Old Testament days, it was very, very harsh days, and so what ended up having to happen is that someone who owed a debt, a pretty sizable debt, in order to avoid debtor's prison, would sell their services, not their actual self, but their services, to a master called an adon, and that master would own their services until the debt was actually paid. And when the debt was paid, that person would go free. They didn't own the person, they owned the debt. And that person actually worked it off. Now, what's interesting is the Bible not only says that when the debt is paid, that person goes free, but also, even if the debt is not paid, every 7 years, if you happen to have a debt that's still owed, at the 7th year of your bondservanthood, you are set free. Your debt is canceled every 7 years. So you're not owned as a slave eternally as property yourself. Your services are, and the debt is canceled every 7 years. And even if the 7 years isn't up, but it happens to be the year of Jubilee, and you've been a bondservant for all of 10 minutes, your debt is canceled and you go free. And by the way, when you go free, the master is required to give you of his own property, of his own money, so that you, by the way, liberally, according to the Bible, so that you never enter into servanthood ever again. The whole point of the biblical idea of servanthood is to end servanthood. Not to perpetuate it, but to end it, to take a harsh reality of life and to end the whole thing. And nowhere, not one place, do you find this level of servanthood, which isn't even slavery in the first place, to be based on race at all. Let me say this. Look at the Old Testament. And you think to yourself, okay, well, Israel was considered a special nation, and all these other ethnicities that were around them were considered inferior because they weren't Israel. That's not actually the case. That's not what's going on here at all. In fact, the word race, by the way, is a social construction. And this is where I think conservatives and liberals can actually quite agree on this kind of stuff, is that race is a social construction. It doesn't actually exist. It's a construction. Actually, it was constructed by people who wanted to justify slavery by saying there's one human race, but we have all these sub-races, and these sub-races have a hierarchy. Some are higher than others. And so when you own certain people, don't feel too bad about it because they're not actually people. The Bible knows nothing of this concept. You can't find it anywhere. The Bible does talk about ethnicity. Ethnicity is different. Ethnicity is not just based on color or appearance. It's based on foods you eat and songs you sing and practices you have. So when Israel is used as an instrument to judge other cultures, like the Canaanites and the Amalekites and the Anakites and the whatever other ites there are that are being judged in the Bible, they're not being judged. I want you to notice something. They're not being judged based on the color of their skin. In fact, the color of their skin was no different than the Israelites. They were all olive-skinned people, except for the North Africans, who might have been darker. But there's no mention whatsoever that they are being judged because of their appearances at all. No, they're being judged. God is using Israel to judge those people because of child sacrifice, because of temple prostitution, because of their economic atrocities, because of their warfare and their marauding, all of these things. God was judging their behavior, not the color of their skin. How do I know this? Because when Israel was doing the exact same things, God used those other nations to judge Israel. So here's the kicker, friends. God judges people not based on the color of their skin, but on the content of their character.